God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. Amen.
Behold the handmaid of the Lord.
Be it done to me according to your word.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. Amen.
And the Word was made flesh,
And dwelt amongst us.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. Amen.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God.
That we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ. Pour for us, we beseech you, O Lord, your grace into our hearts, that we, to whom the incarnation of Christ, your Son, was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
Tonight on the program, the Batasang Pambansa now on lockdown days before President Bongbong Marcos delivers his first State of the Nation address. As the president looking to extend the national state of calamity because of the COVID-19 pandemic, an independent research group says daily infections in the capital region show a rising trend yet again. And fans are ready as the Korean girl group Red Velvet takes on the concert stage here in Manila tonight. Security at the Batasan complex in Quezon City ahead of President Marcos's first State of the Nation address. As Rex Remigio reports, the executive secretary gives a hint about the president's speech.
The Batasan complex is now under lockdown. Gates are most of the time closed, with only authorized personnel being allowed inside. This is how tight the security is for the State of the Nation address of President Marcos. Over 22,000 security personnel are deployed on Monday. Force multipliers are stationed in different areas. Militant group Bayan, meanwhile, is still hoping to get a permit for their planned rally. The Quezon City government earlier denied the request to hold a demonstration along Batasan Road, even if the president's supporters are reportedly being allowed based on the publicity material posted by supporter and ex-councilor Winnie Castelo on social media.
Makikita niyo yung double standards sa application ng batas. Yung mga supporters are being allowed, pero yung mga critics ay hindi.
Gun ban is also in effect in Metro Manila until Wednesday. Inside the complex, the halls of Batasan are renovated, like the session hall where the chief executive will deliver his address. Organizers also added some lights, elevated the platforms, and widened the space for lawmakers. They spent over 100 million pesos for all of these. Over 1,300 guests, including foreign dignitaries, are expected to come. Guests have to show the copy of their invitation, a negative RT-PCR test result, and their vaccination card. Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez meanwhile says the president's address will focus on his plans for the economy, health, education, among others.
It's all about COVID response, and when we speak of COVID response, it's not only about health, it goes all the way to the entire cycle of economy. You go not just health, you go to economy, you go into education, and so on and so forth.
Paul Soriano, husband of actress Tony Gonzaga, is tapped to serve as director of the SONA, while the Samiweng singers of Ilocos Norte National High School will sing the national anthem. Rex Remigio, CNN Philippines.
So what is a State of the Nation address? What is it for, and what does it do? Watch this.
A newspaper columnist, John Neri, described the SONA as political theater. The SONA is about performance and projection. It puts the wind in the nation's sails, sets direction and vision. It's meant to tell us where the president wants to take us. With all that soaring rhetoric, catchy phrases, and human props. It's a speech that's always played to the gallery, both inside and outside the Batasan Pambansa. Inside the Batasan, senators and representatives of the newly opened 19th Congress, composed predominantly, by the way, of the country's most powerful political families. The Vice President, who this time around is on the President's side. The Cabinet, the leadership of the uniformed services, the armed forces, and the police. The judiciary, represented by the Supreme Court, the Sandigan Bayan, and the Ombudsman. The diplomatic corps. The President's family, now the new First Family, wife, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and sons Sandro, who is Ilocos Norte Congressman, and Vinny and Simon. His mother Imelda, and his sisters, Senator Amy Marcos, Irene, and Amy. And the 4 former living presidents, 3 of whom attended the incumbent's inaugural. Besides beauty pageants, boxing, and basketball, politics is another favorite Pinoy pastime, and that's why everyone will want a bit of the action and will want to listen to what Bongbong Marcos will say in his first State of the Nation address. He's sure to talk about agriculture, the economy, education, and the pandemic, as he did in his inaugural address. Expectations are high, not just for this SONA, but for this new president as well. And not just from the 31 million who voted for him, but also from what he said are his 110 million reasons to be confident.
That I have 110 million reasons to start with. Such is my faith in the Filipino.
The 17th president will deliver his first State of the Nation address on Monday, July 25th. We will bring that to you as it happens at the Batasan Pambansa in Quezon City, beginning at 2 in the afternoon. Catch the live coverage of the opening of the 19th Congress in the morning at 9:30, only here on CNN Philippines. The Defense Department vowing to protect the country's territory and sovereignty even as the new administration looks into sustaining warm ties with China. David Santos has that and other priorities of the new leadership.
Defense Department's 10-point agenda, safeguarding the nation's territorial integrity.
We are in a better state right now than we were 10 years ago, say military capability, our ability to conduct maritime security patrols, sovereignty patrols in those areas. And we will continue to do that.
But the new DND leadership is also assuring it will toe the line with President Marcos's marching orders to keep a friendly stance towards China over the West Philippine Sea, avoiding a sudden shift in policy set by former President Rodrigo Duterte.
What we want is a rules-based international order in these areas, and we support that. And I think both those administrations and this administration ay ganun ang patutunguhan ng polisiya.
The DND will also pursue international defense ties beyond traditional allies, with some countries now more aggressive in holding joint trainings with Filipino security forces.
Ngayon, we are extending our activities for a stronger cooperation with Japan, not only sa economic but military and defense as well.
The DND will also review its multi-billion peso military modernization program, especially big-ticket items, amid the government's austerity measures to deal with other priorities like food security and pandemic response.
We're trying to review it in a way that these are what we need, what we really need with the available budget na kayang ibigay sa atin. No?
Internal security remains critical as the drawn-out war versus communism and radicalism continues. The DND is backing the controversial anti-insurgency task force as it also eyes the revival of the ROTC program on campuses. These amid allegations of military abuse against activists, prompting protests outside Camp Aguinaldo.
ROTC lang po, isa lang po siyang mission para po maging utak militar, para po hindi tayo maging critical po ng mga estudyante, para po hindi po tayo magtanong tungkol sa mga kapalpakan ng gobyerno, para po tayo, sumunod na lang po tayo.
Beyond the usual security concerns, there are also non-traditional threats like cyber attacks and disasters brought about by climate change. The DND playing a key role in keeping up with President Marcos's campaign promise of a stronger and better Philippines. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
On to Philippine-United States relations, the Agriculture Department ties up with an American university to battle transboundary animal diseases like the African swine fever. The DA signed a 3-year memorandum of understanding with the University of Minnesota in a deal that would facilitate knowledge sharing through the exchange of faculty, scientists, and technical staff. The U.S. Embassy in the Philippines says the U.S. Agriculture Department is funding the initiative. The Philippines was first hit with ASF in July 2019. The disease forced backyard farms in a number of provinces to cull their livestock. Authorities have also imposed restrictions on transporting pigs and pork products. Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez stays in the cabinet after rumors of his supposed resignation surfaced. Rodriguez says he has no idea where the rumor began and that he continues to serve at the pleasure of the president. Malacanang earlier denied reports that Rodriguez resigned.
I'm still here in my office. I think it must be clear that the moment he or she accepts the nomination and request coming from the president, by the president, to help him serve and run the country, I think automatic yun. The moment you said yes, automatic na rin, na tinanggap mo na rin na anytime you will be asked to leave. But until that happens, then you stay.
Rodriguez was President Marcos's longtime chief of staff and spokesperson before his appointment as executive secretary. Coming up on Newsnight, environmental groups call on President Marcos to address the climate crisis by ramping up the shift to clean energy. And K-pop sensation Red Velvet is ready to delight fans in its box seat tonight at SM Mall of Asia. Stay with us.
MX3 dahil ito ay napatunayang may alpha, beta, at gamma mangosteen. MX3 capsule helps avoid pain discomfort para iwas sakit. Tested and proven na low sodium, cholesterol-free, at fat-free. Dito ako sa tunay, natural, at original. MX3.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy! With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Baby, I'm home! Happy yes ako kapag listo at ganado siyang kumain. Happy and healthy siya sa Nutri-Chunks. Recommended by my vet. Nutri-Chunks is the only one with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat and fortified pa with essential nutrients that help keep him strong, healthy, and happy. Listo ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
A pandemic watchdog warns of increasing positivity rates in Metro Manila days after projecting a possible drop in cases by next month. Okta research says the rate of people testing positive for COVID-19 rose to 14.6% on July 20th from 14% 3 days before. These figures are higher than the benchmark of 5%. Okta says it is unclear what is driving the change in trends. The group earlier projected Metro Manila may reach its peak in daily infections this week. Despite the rising cases, Health Officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergeres says the President has asked the department to study whether the state of calamity should be extended by September. Vergeres said removing the status would affect vaccine supplies, COVID-19 treatments, and medicine costs.
We have instructed Food and Drug Administration already to start informing our manufacturers and trying to coordinate with them sino na pwede mag-CPR. Para kung sakasakaling mas lift ang state of calamity, may magkaka-CPR na, hindi tayo magkakaproblema sa gamit ng ating mga bakuna as well as with our drugs. And of course, the legalities din, kailangan pag-aralan yan.
A local government in Metro Manila is bringing vaccines closer to people. Marikina is set to offer COVID-19 doses in schools and marketplaces by August and in transport terminals by September.
We do not mandate. We provided them with a wide array of vaccine, portfolio of vaccine. So nakakapili yung tao. We provide the access to people. And secondly, we have doctors on vaccination site who do consultation.
Marikina has vaccinated 146% of the target population, including non-residents. Doctors are continuing to monitor U.S. President Joe Biden after he tested positive for COVID-19 on Thursday. His diagnosis comes as COVID-19 cases soar across the country. CNN's Jen Sullivan has the update on the president's health and on what the latest surge means for the nation.
As the nation grapples with more than 100,000 new COVID cases a day, the most prominent case coming out of the White House Thursday. President Joe Biden testing positive for the coronavirus.
I'm doing well. I'm getting a lot of work done. I'm going to continue to get it done.
The president's personal physician releasing a letter stating Biden is only experiencing mild symptoms, including a runny nose, fatigue, and occasional dry cough.
I really appreciate your inquiry and your concerns.
The 79-year-old commander-in-chief tested positive after a recent trip to the Middle East. The White House says they're unsure, though, where he caught it. He's resting and taking the antiviral treatment Paxlovid and will remain in isolation until next Tuesday.
Because the president is fully vaccinated, double boosted, his risk of serious illness is dramatically lower.
The president's diagnosis comes as COVID cases are soaring across the country, many fueled by the highly contagious Omicron variants BA4 and BA5. The majority of states seeing a 10 to 50% increase in cases in just the last 2 weeks.
We've never seen as much virus circulating as is currently circulating in the United States.
The average number of new cases is reaching nearly 126,000 a day, but experts say those numbers are likely much higher.
We probably are currently seeing somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 new cases per day, most of them being tested at home.
Despite the surge in infections, very few areas are reinstating mask mandates. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
U.S. First Lady Jill Biden has tested negative for COVID-19. Now back here at home, Filipinos are cutting back on expenses to save money for emergencies, but as Lois Calderon reports, a number of consumers can no longer afford to do so, with prices continuing to soar.
When food and fuel prices rise to record highs, it's hard to imagine how one can build savings. But food tech Jessa Beth Garciano did just that. Over the past 7 years since graduating from college, Jessa grew her savings to over 1 million pesos.
Top of my priority to set 20% for savings, and then the remaining 80% would be the disposable income. Actually, kasama na doon yung insurance, savings.
Bills are there, sure, because even when single or unmarried, Jessa supports her parents and younger brother. How does she save for a rainy day?
I also take advantage of the vouchers in an online payment. So sometimes they give vouchers. For groceries, I tend to buy in bulk, especially like if it's discounted or there are like buy one take one.
Jessa mirrors the life of Filipinos struggling to save up despite hard times, the twin blows of rising inflation and a nagging pandemic. In a survey conducted by New York-listed firm TransUnion, 43% of respondents said they cut back on discretionary spending or travel and dining out the past quarter. 56% said they set aside funds for emergencies. Jessa opened a separate bank account for that purpose.
If you don't have a clear purpose of your savings kasi, mas matitempt tayong ma-withdraw yung emergency fund natin.
But Jessa could be an exception to the rule. The Philippines has yet to be fully financially literate for its citizens to grow their wealth. In separate findings by think tank Ibon Foundation, 7 in 10 families don't have savings. It's something that Ibon Executive Director Sonny Africa said should be in the SONA agenda.
Kung pag-uusapan ang sinong bibigyan ng ayuda, hindi lamang yung transport group,
dapat magkaroon nga sila. Hindi yan actually sinasabi ng Poorest of the Poor na 4Ps. Nababawasan pa ng 1 million. And nangailangan ng tulong, more or less, the vulnerable 19 million poorest Filipinos na walang savings.
According to Ibon, any subsidies that leave out these 19 million Filipinos appear to be mere token and not enough for a social safety net. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
Ahead of President Marcos's first SONA, environment groups are urging the chief executive to prioritize shifting to renewable energy towards climate justice. Groups led by Greenpeace and the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice are appealing to President Marcos to make good on a promise to put first clean energy by rejecting fossil fuels, coal, and nuclear energy. The country aims to boost its renewable energy use from 21% to 35% by 2030. Although the country's carbon footprint is very small, the groups point out it will be hard hit by the impacts of climate change.
Kung sinabing priority ito, dapat malinaw ang tugon nila. If they want to address yung climate emergency, dapat unahin ang pagtulak ng renewable energy para makamit ang hustisya para sa klima.
Nananawagan tayo sa ating Pangulo na magdeklara ng climate emergency. Sana mai-priority niya sa kanyang unang SONA yung agenda natin para sa climate justice.
Environment Secretary Antonia Yulo Loizaga identified climate change as one of the agency's priorities. She cited the need to use practical adaptation measures to address the crisis. President Marcos and Secretary Yulo Loizaga met Wednesday to discuss environment protection efforts and other issues. The President said he will review the policies and programs to be laid out by the Environment Department. Again, stay tuned to CNN Philippines as we bring you the President's first State of the Nation address live from the Batasan Pambansa in Quezon City on Monday, July 25th from 2 in the afternoon onwards. Catch the live coverage of the opening of the 19th Congress in the morning at 9:30 only here on CNN Philippines. Citing several factors, including the retention of a controversial anti-communist task group, some groups are saying human rights may not be among the priorities of the Marcos administration. Apart from linking activists to communist groups, human rights advocates are also expecting more arrests to silence administration critics. Our George Gilas has that story.
These activists are accusing the military of abducting 4 of their colleagues. They're called Surface Ador Huat, Loy Magbanwa, Cha Cortez, and Elgin Mungkal. Huat and Magbanwa, both labor organizers, were allegedly abducted by state forces on May 3 in Valenzuela City, while Cortez, a member of Anakpawis, and Mungkal, a member of Gabriela, were reported to have been missing since July 3. Groups say abduction and illegal arrests were schemes that were used during the martial law period under former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. They fear that this will continue under the watch of his junior.
There's a political presumption and even a prognosis that Mr. Marcos Jr. will not promote, will not protect, will not defend human rights.
Armed Forces spokesperson Colonel Medel Aguilar denies the allegation against them, saying the military does not tolerate human rights abuses. Despite this, human rights advocates insist there is no clear indicator that there will be some favorable policy shift as to the human rights situation under President Bongbong Marcos. Groups say the Anti-Communist Task Force NTF-ELCAC remains to be a tool to red tag activists and silence those who are critical to the government.
It is no mere coincidence but deliberate policy that under the aegis of the NTF-ELCAC, the political prisoners have now increased to 802, the highest number in 36 years after the downfall of the Marcos dictatorship in February 1986.
Groups say they will exhaust legal remedies to pressure the government to fairly address the matter on missing activists. George Gilas, CNN Philippines.
The country sustains efforts to fight human trafficking. The Philippines retained its Tier 1 ranking in the U.S. State Department's annual report for a 7th straight year. Countries and territories under Tier 1 fully meet the minimum standards of the U.S. Trafficking Victims Protection Act. But the U.S. also flagged the Philippines for not vigorously investigating labor trafficking crimes in the country and for failing to take steps against perpetuators of commercial sex activities. The report also said the government did not report the total number of anti-trafficking operations and investigations of illegal recruitment. The Commission on Elections is confident the barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections in December will push through amid calls for their postponement. COMELEC says preparations are happening as scheduled. Voter registration now in full swing and is set to end tomorrow. So far, there are over 2.1 million newly registered voters. COMELEC also says delaying the barangay and SK elections may affect succeeding polls, including the 2025 midterm race. Lawmakers are pushing to postpone the December elections, arguing it will save the government billions of pesos. Coming up on Newsnight, heads up Beyoncé fans, the pop icon reveals a track list for upcoming album Renaissance. And after 3 years, Korean girl group Red Velvet will again perform for Filipino fans tonight in a special benefit concert. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
It can be dangerous out there. Buti na lang there's locally super fruits with 3 kinds of fruits that are super. No added sugar and high in vitamin C. Lastly, we have our mangosteen drink. Good for your heart. All superfruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit to help protect your immune system. Superfruit for super you.
With more infrastructures in place, like airports, expressways, and those hard-to-reach areas, even the smallest or the micro businesses such as us would grow in terms of faster and efficient services and being able to deliver to more customers and being able to also reach out to more communities.
Infrastructure projects of San Miguel will enable greater connectivity and encourage further development in rural areas and decongest major cities for better mobility. By moving more people more efficiently, San Miguel helps the economy by making its citizens more productive. Less time spent traveling will translate to increased economic activities.
Welcome back. In sports, the Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas shares the sentiment of fans after a lackluster campaign of Gilas Pilipinas in the FIBA Asia Cup. SBP President Al Padillo calls the 9th place finish a disappointment. Gilas has been facing a series of misses in the global court with a silver medal finish in the 31st Southeast Asian Games, a first since 1989. The SBP calls for unity as the team hopes to raise the flag in the 2023 FIBA World Cup. Well, speaking of FIBA, a much-needed boost for Gilas with Filipino-American NBA star Jordan Clarkson set to join the squad in the 4th window of the World Cup Asian qualifiers. The SBP says the Utah Jazz guard is likely to play against Lebanon on August 25th and Saudi Arabia on August 29th. And Team Philippines all set for the 11th ASEAN Para Games happening next week. A total of 144 Filipino athletes will aim for gold across 11 sports from July 30th to August 16th in Indonesia. In music, the countdown to Queen Bee's new album just got more exciting. Beyoncé reveals the track list for her upcoming album Renaissance. The 16-song set includes the already released single Break My Soul and other hits to watch out for like Alien Superstar, Move, and I'm That Girl. Renaissance is Beyoncé's first album in 6 years, dropping July 29th. And one of your favorite K-pop superstars is here, Red Velvet, performing in Manila again after 3 years. The Korean girl group will headline a benefit concert, Be You, The World Will Adjust, alongside P-pop stars BGYO, Beanie, and Lady Pipay. Red Velvet takes the stage tonight at 7 at the SM Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
RPN Radio Philippines Network. DXTD Dipolo Radio Ronda.
Many of us put a lot of strain on our abdomens without even knowing it. Now, if your job requires you to do a lot of heavy lifting, or if you're overweight, or if you're pregnant, or have undergone a surgical procedure, these circumstances can leave you vulnerable to what are called hernias. They occur when fat tissue or part of an organ in your body pushes through a weakened spot in the abdomen. As a result, you may see a lump or even a bulge in the belly or in the groin and feel some uncomfortable pain. Now, this can be alarming for a lot of us, but they're not usually life-threatening. On the program today, let's talk more about why hernias happen, how to spot them, and what you should do if you notice one happen. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. If you experience some pain or tenderness in your belly or around your groin that seem to not go away, you may have what's called an hernia. Now, our guests are here today to tell us more about this condition. With us is Dr. Leonardo Ona III. He's a general surgeon from St. Luke's Medical Center, Global City. Also with us is Dr. Nicodemus Ong, who is an internal medicine specialist as well as a gastroenterologist at St. Luke's Medical Center in Quezon City, as well as Fatima University Medical Center. Thank you both for joining us on this episode of MedTalk Health Talk. Now, your abdomen is made up of muscles and strong tissue that protect your internal organs. But when these muscles and tissue are weakened, an organ or tissue can squeeze through, giving what's called an hernia. I'll start the discussion with Dr. Ona. Tell us more about this condition. Saan, Dr. Ona, nangyayari karaniwan ang hernia?
Well, more commonly, we see them in what we call the inguinal area. Sa Pilipino, yung singit na lugar, no? The reason being is that majority still is congenital, kung titingnan mo, even for adults, no? Because there is something that failed to close during the embryo stage of the patient. No? Another reason for it to happen is because of a weakness in the wall. When we get older, the walls or the muscles become thinner, and if you have a high pressure in the abdomen, the tendency for that abdominal pressure is to make the intestines or any contents in the abdominal cavity protrude out of the abdominal wall. No? And another is a history of surgery or any manipulation in the wall wherein the weakness of, the strength of the wall is not 100% anymore. So the tendency is for that weak area to give way for the contents to come out and protrude out.
There are different types of hernias which can occur in different parts of your body as well. But the most common type, as mentioned by Dr. Ona, is the inguinal hernia. In fact, 27% of men and around just 3% of women can develop it at some point in their lives. Now, Dr. Nico, let's talk about some of the different types of hernias.
You have the external hernias. So you have ventral wall or the anterior abdominal wall hernias, where you have umbilical hernia, you have incisional type, you have spigelian hernia. So we have another type, which is the inguinal type of hernia. So that's the most common type. Then there is also a lumbar type of hernia, where you have the Griffiths and the Petit hernia. Then there's also an internal type of hernia.
Are the symptoms relatively similar no matter what type of hernia?
Regardless of the hernia, usually people will just feel a bulge there. So that's a symptomatic hernia. Sometimes people will feel a slight discomfort on that area. So that's already called symptomatic hernia. So, and then the worst case scenario where it's actually very life-threatening is the incarcerated or strangulated hernia. So incarcerated hernia, that would mean that the abdominal organ that is protruding out to any part or any weakness in the abdominal wall is already irreducible. That means no matter what you do, that abdominal organ is stuck there. And if it's super painful, that's already strangulated hernia. That means the blood supply to that organ that is protruding out is already compromised. That means there is no blood supply. So that is already emergency surgery.
Let's talk about when a hernia becomes symptomatic. Could you explain that a little bit more, Dr. Ona? Does surgery have a role with hernias that have mild symptoms?
Basically, if you look anywhere, the treatment for hernia, especially for symptomatic one, kasi is surgery. But before going there, if you have a hernia, meaning there is a defect and there is protrusion out, the risk for developing symptoms or complication in the future is not that high initially. In the first year, mga less than mga 2% lang yun. But it goes higher as you go along. And eventually, people who have this will have to consider having surgery. No? So going back to the question, may role bang surgery? Yes, the possibility of having surgery for asymptomatic and for those with mild symptoms should be discussed to the patient, because the probability of it becoming a moderate or severe symptom will be higher eventually in his or her lifetime.
Pag-usapan natin yun a little bit more, Dr. Ona, no? Because what you were explaining, an hernia that is beginning to develop, which does not have any symptoms, may progress over time to become potentially a serious situation. Now, what is the main cause for that progression, Dr. Ona?
Well, many things. Number one, as we age, we lose water, the integrity of our tissues, including the layers in the abdomen, becomes thinner. So because of that loss of integrity, its capacity to hold the abdominal contents within its compartment is lesser already. Now, as we grow older also, we also develop some conditions. For example, for those with chronic cough, the pressure in the abdominal wall is increased too much, so that plus the fact that you have a weakened wall, the tendency for you to have a protrusion is high. No?
When we return, we'll talk more about what happens if you find an hernia in your young child and how you are properly diagnosed to have an hernia. We're your partner in healthcare. Keep it here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Early on the show, we talked about how hernias occur and what you should do or how to spot it if it becomes serious. Now let's talk about what you should do if you discover that your newborn baby has a protrusion on their stomach. Dr. Nico, let's talk about that. It can be very unsettling for a parent, especially a new parent, na makita nila yung anak nila and they see some protrusions or bumps on them that may or not be normal. Now, could you describe for us what a hernia in an infant may look like and how should new parents approach this?
First of all, the abdominal cavity or the abdomen in an infant, it should be a bit globular. So it's like a balloon. It should be as smooth as a balloon. So it should not have any parang protruding out of any part of that abdomen. So if you see parang a bump or an abnormal protrusion, it's best if you consult your pediatrician. If it is less than 4 years old, the belly button can protrude slightly out. So it should not be more than around 0.5 centimeters, no? So dapat maliit lang siya kung magpo-protrude siya dun sa umbilical hernia. However, if your children is more than approximately 2 to 4 years old na, that umbilical hernia should actually decrease or liliit siya dapat. Hindi siya dapat dumalaki. If the protrusion or the hernia in the umbilical area is getting bigger and bigger, yes, you should get checked to a pediatrician immediately.
Yes, but ang importante dyan for the parent is not to panic right away. It's always good to seek consult to get the correct information. Now, Dr. Ona, kapag merong hernia ang isang bata, is this a concern for the parent to have it immediately fixed?
Well, it really depends, no? For umbilical hernia, as Dr. Nico has told us, umbilical hernias, they do close, no, within 5 years, no? Kung 4 to 5 years old, the hernia is still the same. It's bigger, or it hasn't significantly closed. Then the possibility of doing surgery would be there, because the problem with children is that they cry, especially infants, and when you have crying, the pressure in the abdomen becomes higher. That aggravates the condition. But for umbilical hernia, we can observe, unless if there is strangulation, as was discussed.
Now, Dr. Nico, we were talking about yung mga bata. Let's talk about the elderly naman, because they're higher risk. Earlier, Dr. Ona mentioned also how habang tumatanda, numinipis ang wall ng abdomen. What does this mean, and how does this pose an increased risk for hernias, Dr. Nico?
Okay, so patients that are at increased risk to develop hernias as an adult, the risk factors are as follows. So first, older age. So mga elderly natin. Number 2, there is chronic cough. Number 3, there's smoking. And then number 4, some previous abdominal surgery, or kung kailan nabukas na yung stomach. That's actually the risk factors, or those are the patients that are high risk to develop abdominal hernias.
Dr. Nico, how is one properly diagnosed to have an hernia? Anong klaseng procedures usually ang ginagawa ng isang doktor to have a proper diagnosis of hernia?
Actually, for the diagnosis of hernia, the most important thing here is a proper physical examination. So first, if you see a bulge there, you need to get checked by a doctor. So that doctor will first inspect the area. So tignan natin kung nasaan siya, gaano siya kalaki, nagpo-protrude ba siya or hindi. Then the doctor will proceed on palpating that area. So what is protruding? Is it an organ or is it fat?
Do our viewers need to take other tests before they see the doctor? An ultrasound, CT scan, X-ray, all of these tools needed before they go to a doctor?
Actually, for hernias, you don't need an ultrasound before going to a doctor. What you need is a physical examination first. Then if the doctor needs confirmation on that hernia, that's the time we request for an imaging test. Most of the time, we don't request for imaging test actually for hernia.
Really quickly, before we go to break, Dr. Ona, let's talk about some of the risk factors ng mga may prior surgical procedures. What are the more common ones? And how long after that procedure can one expect to see that maybe an hernia, if ever it does happen?
Well, any abdominal surgery, any surgery wherein the abdominal wall has been opened is a risk factor. There is no straight rule as to when and where it will happen.
Now, sometimes hernias can't be prevented, but there are measures you can take to lower the risk of getting one. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Men, women, and children alike can all get hernias. Now, you can't always prevent it from developing, especially if this is something that happened while you were being developed. Now, they occur at birth or because of an existing medical condition or previous surgery. But some simple lifestyle changes can help lower your risk of getting one. Now, Dr. Nico, I'd like to ask you, when it comes to preventing not just having hernias, but a lot of diseases in the body as well, we talk about modifiable risk factors. Ano ba ito, and how can this help someone have a less chance of having an hernia?
Earlier, I discussed about the risk factors of a person that would predispose them to develop hernias. So these are old age, smoking, chronic cough, and previous abdominal surgery or previous incision. So for age, actually you can't do anything about it. For smoking, definitely you can quit smoking. So stop smoking. Number 3, previous abdominal surgery, yung sa surgical site, you need to take care of it well. And then for the chronic cough, of course, if you have chronic cough, you need to get checked with the pulmonologist. One more thing is that remember that hernias would develop from a weakness of the abdominal wall. So it is also very useful if you would do abdominal wall exercises. So pag isi-strengthen natin yung abdominal muscles natin sa back and sa front, you can actually prevent yung further development or complications of a hernia. And if you know you actually have a hernia, you can actually wear supporters when you're working out to prevent it from progressing. Para at least may isa ka pang layer of protection para hindi grumabe yung butas niya.
So definitely those are good tips in trying to prevent the progression if ever there is that small or mild type of hernia. Now, Dr. Ona, let's talk about some of the treatment options kapag na-diagnose ng tama ang isang taong may hernia. What are usually the surgical procedures done? How is that abdominal wall strengthened?
There are two principles here. No? For children, especially for those congenital causes, there is no weakness of the wall. There is just this persistent sac. So what the surgeons do, what we do usually, is just to get that sac and ligate that sac, and that's it. Because we expect the wall to be intact, to be competent naman. No? But for older people, and especially for direct hernias, and older people who have indirect hernias, what we do is surgery. No? We either open or minimally invasive. For minimally invasive surgery, we perform it either laparoscopic or as of late, we can do it robotics. No? But basically, it's the most common procedure being done are both open technique and laparoscopic.
Okay, so once someone undergoes repair of hernia, Dr. Ona, what are some of the pointers that you tell your patients post-surgery para less chance ng umulit?
Okay. Number one, of course, they have to guard themselves from getting the pressure high. No, if the patient has a COPD or any lung problem wherein he is predisposed to cough a lot, he has to get good treatment on maintaining the cough not to happen a lot also para yung abdominal pressure niya is maintained. No? Also for patients who have prostate problems, dapat na-address nila so that wala silang masyadong straining. No? As far as activity is concerned, actually wala. No? Because nowadays we employ the use of what we call mesh. These are good material wherein we lessen the tension in the hernia repair. So what it means is that almost 100% yung tensile strength niya because of the improved tension. No? So, kung ano yung activity niyang ginagawa dati, we expect him to be able to do that activity also.
With that, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Leonardo Ona III and Dr. Nicodemus Ong for being with us today and sharing a lot of information when it comes to hernias. We appreciate your time and your expertise very much. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching Men Talk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.